Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and let's get right to it. We're pleased to be joined by Indiana Senator and Republican gubernatorial candidate Mike Braun. Senator Braun, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be back on.
I saw your statement about the foreign aid package that was voted out of the Senate and sent over to the House, the $95 billion, which included $60 billion for Ukraine, as we talked a little bit earlier in the show, in addition to money for Israel, money for Gaza. There was also sort of this humanitarian aid that gave discretion for the president to use for quote-unquote other vulnerable populations that would be in addition to Ukrainians or Gazans and so forth. And so, one wonders how that could be repurposed in the context of our border problems. Your review of that legislation and those 19 Republican senators who voted it out of the Senate.
Well, number one, in the statement that I made, I hope I mentioned that every penny of this would be borrowed money, which no one mentions that because that's almost become passé in D.C., but this isn't coming out of any offset of anything else, and that's the real issue in the long run is how much that's going to start crippling the federal government, and the fact that you've got then, actually I think it ended up being 22 Republican senators that were on that final passage. There were other procedural votes, but that make the deal with 100% of the Democrats. And I'd ask your listeners to recall when the last time we got even one Democrat on a significant piece of legislation when we run the show, and of course that doesn't happen. So no, it is one where it was clear that the southern border has now become an issue to the point where 4 months ago, 41 senators, that's the magic number to keep anything from advancing. You got to have 41, not grant cloture, which means continue a filibuster. And if you don't have that happen, you cannot actually get to the bill. But then McConnell saw where that was going to go down, and the whole ruse of doing a deal that the Democrats would agree to on the border, that border kind of a supplemental bill that we burned 3 months. I knew back then that was just a kind of a way to let folks think that you're interested in it. That fails, and they knew it would because it had no border security in it. That was H.R. 2, which had been sitting in the Senate for about 4 or 5 months that Schumer has no interest in taking up. Now we come to this, and that's the way the place works. And here is why, and I'll let you get back to the next question. I call it the unholy alliance, and that is where these sometimes it just takes 10 to 12 Republicans. In this case, there are enough neocons and people that believe that we should be borrowing money and spending it overseas as opposed to our southern border that make the deal with the Democrats, and that's now amounting to borrowing $2 trillion a year. Just 5 years ago when I got there, it was about $1 trillion. It is shameful in my mind.
Well, I get that the big spenders and the internationalists when it comes to foreign affairs, and maybe they still consider themselves, Cold War warriors with some respects, and this is how they view Russia. But I mean, just the overall play here to, as I think Rand Paul said, give the middle finger to middle America by saying, after we try to sort of essentially surrender on the border and attach all of this money that you say we were borrowing to spend, then, we scuttle the border piece because that's a non-starter, and we're going to try and jam it down your throats anyway because these are our priorities. I mean, the mentality among some of the, I get sort of, an imperious Mitch McConnell who's been there perhaps a few generations too long. But some of the other rank and file senators, the mentality, I mean, are they that up their own backsides that they don't appreciate what's going on in the country, including their home states?
Well, yeah, and sadly, they'll calculate it if they're had just been elected. In other words, whether they're 2 or 4 years out, especially the ones that don't come around again until 2028, they're even more brazen because they think they can kind of get this to fade into a memory. But the good news is, of the last 17 senators that have been elected, I was talking to some of the folks that, we were talking about, well, how do you do this? Of course, there were 6, 7 senators that stayed up all night, and then the vote was finally held at about 5 or 6 in the morning, Tuesday morning. 15 out of the last 17 senators are leaning away from that traditional neocon borrow money from our kids and grandkids for whatever your latest and greatest is. We still want to lead. I don't think we should give that up. We can't crawl in a hole. But when Trump asks the NATO members to pay their 2%, these guys just laugh that off. But that'll be just like Admiral Mike Mullins said years ago, I fear the red ink more than the red menace. We are getting more senators replacing the ranks of the old guard every year, and there was even a leadership battle in terms of who was going to run the party.
Rick Scott, right?
Roughly, yeah. Rick Scott loved it. He threw his name in the hat. 6 or 7 of us voted for him and made it public. Another 3 did as well. There are going to be another 6 or 7 from just who's come in 2022, and they build confidence. And now that core of senators is leaning away from this repeat of what you see and frustrates all the folks in our base and even deeper into our own party as a joke.
But what is like John Cornyn, John Thune, Joni Ernst? What do they think of you, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, Josh Hawley? I mean, what is sort of the dynamic between the factions, if you will, in the caucus? Because I think people are having a difficult time. I mean, especially as it pertains to the border, even more than the neocon piece of it, especially as it pertains to the border and all of the implications and what's going on. The idea of putting Langford out there the way that McConnell did and Langford agreeing to do it. I mean, what is the philosophical divide, or is it personal, or is it personal interest? Explain the dynamic.
No, I mean it's MAGA versus McConnell, but those aren't defined lines. When you mention folks like Cornyn and Thune and the other John Barrasso, who would generally be with the conservatives, or the 3 that are out there that would be considered the favorites, one of the 3 to be the new majority leader. And I'm hoping somebody from within that growing conservative kind of a part of the party, like a Rick Scott, would try it again. But the difference is not clear. But when I told you earlier that unholy alliance is generally always going to be the folks that put defense on a pedestal to where they, and foreign aid, where they always want it because their focus is not fiscal conservatism. It's not even some of the other issues. It's not even our southern border. That is preeminent. And the Democrats roll them because they don't care how much money you're going to borrow and spend. They're going to match or exceed on the domestic side. And all of them generally would have the underlying reason defense, foreign aid, are sacrosanct. You can't touch it, and then they get rid of their fiscal conservatism, and they hang together. This was a few more than normal because you brought in foreign aid and defense. Those aren't one and the same, but it would generally you saw all the senators that put that as a priority over every other issue, and then get rolled by the Dems.
What about this 17 million that goes to help vulnerable countries? What exactly does that mean?
Well, that means it's a grab bag for whatever Biden would think you need elsewhere. And again, that is subjective. That is going to have a lot of latitude. And was that necessary in this No, but when you know something's going to go through, which just was inevitable, they load it up rather than pare it down.
So on the border, though, is it just as simple as I'm on Team McConnell and you're on Team Trump, and it really doesn't matter that much what the issue is? I'm casting my lot with McConnell, and not necessarily the those who agree with Trump in opposition to that border bill are throwing their lot with Trump, but they're sort of throwing their lot with the base of the party, and frankly, probably their personal philosophy too, in many cases, including yours. But is that what it is? Is it just sort of juvenile?
That's what the Dems and McConnell want you to think. And now you watch the liberal media is trying to, in a very hypocritical way, say the Republicans are to blame for not getting the border bill. That border bill would have baselined illegal immigration 8 to 10 times what it was at pre-COVID. And in other words, since Biden took over. And then the other thing it would do is you don't even need legislation, technically speaking, because Biden is using the same template, the same legislative substrate as what Trump had. Trump just did it with enforcement in mind. Biden and the Democrats want open borders because they think it benefits them politically. So that's another issue, and you don't want to pass something that legitimizes a level 8 to 10 times what it was. Trump gets elected, and then he's handcuffed on even getting it back to where it was before. That's the ruse. That's the complication.
Right. I understand, but what I don't understand, I still don't understand. I'm trying to get this. Maybe there's not an easy answer. The Republicans who supported that, do they not understand the implications of slow walking to the same destination as the full-on open borders, or do they not care? And if they don't care, why? Why don't they care? Don't they understand the implications?
Again, those Republicans are probably, if you had a pure border bill, I mean, that's why 41 Republicans stuck together. They're going to be for that. Then they get swept into doing them together. I think McConnell was, he's been there long enough. He knew that was going to fail. But then you get rid of the kind of artificial attempt at a fake border bill, then you immediately jump on what at least half of those 22 senators, if not a little more than that, were most interested in was not the border, it would have been the foreign aid component, the supplemental.
Yeah.
That sounds confusing,
No,
but I think that's about as clear as you're going to get on how the inside ball works. And until we get more Republicans that are not going to fall for that and that put the border and our country's future financially as maybe the two priorities, you're going to get more of the nonsense that you've been witnessing.
Are the Republican caucus going to stand in unison, even though they don't have the votes to convict, in the Mayorkas impeachment? Or are you going to see those same Republicans who peeled off to join the Democrats do them on the Mayorkas impeachment too?
Well, the sad thing is, I'm not sure what Senate protocol is, but
or even if it'll be called. Yeah,
Schumer will sit on that in terms of whatever he can do to keep it either to be a kind of a perfunctory exercise, or if he could keep it from even coming to the floor. And I'm not sure about what the rules are there. He has no interest in that. So that won't go anywhere in the Senate. And then I don't know how many Republican senators, if it did come up, would end up voting to convict. It doesn't make any difference because there wouldn't be one Democrat that would, and you need 2/3 of the Senate on board to convict through an impeachment. So it is all mostly messaging, but I'm glad the House did it because what Mayorkas has done as the implementer and Biden as the band leader, something needs to be done other than saying it's a bad policy.
He is Indiana Senator Mike Braun, also Republican candidate for governor in Indiana come November. Senator Braun, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
This holiday season, did you visit your crawl space to retrieve the Christmas tree and decorations? Are you one who wouldn't venture down there on a bet? Hi, I'm Roy Spencer from Permaseal, and if you're one of the latter, I can't blame you. We've seen some pretty nasty crawl spaces full of mold, mildew, and crawly things. Certainly not a place to store your family treasures. Well, this year, let Permaseal wrap your crawl space up in our Clean Space encapsulation system. Clean Space will transform your dirty, dark crawl space into a bright, clean, valuable storage area where you can confidently store even your most treasured ornaments and mementos. As a bonus, you'll find you'll have warmer floors and cleaner air upstairs. What a wonderful holiday present for the entire family and a great investment in your home. For a free inspection and estimate, call Permaseal, 800-421-SEAL. That's 800-421-7325 or visit permaseal.net.
Guys, if you've noticed a lack of energy, motivation, and drive,